Meet Peng. She's a 14-year-old Cambodian girl, and this story is really about her. Now, Cambodia was destroyed by war and genocide in the 1970s, and between 3 and 6 million people tragically died. After all the genocide, lots of orphanages popped up for all the kids who'd lost their parents. It's had more than its share of problems, resulting in more problems. Hi, I'm Simon, and this is my wife Carmony. This is Carmony's sister Renuka, and Renuka's husband Dan. Carmony and I are visionary people with a heart for Cambodia. Dan and Nuka are people with a heart for Cambodia. Back in 2010, we said to Dan and Nuka, you guys should do awesome stuff in Cambodia and we'll help. So, they volunteered at an orphanage for a year. All the genocide orphans have grown up now, so you'd think there'd be less orphanages than there were, but there's actually more than ever. The problem with orphanages, they discovered, is that most of the kids have parents. But the parents send their kids to the orphanage for better education, but that means orphanages are actually separating families. So Dan and Nuka left the orphanage, and we felt it was time to start something new. The first question was where in Cambodia? So Dan and I explored the country on a motorbike until we ended up on the south coast of Cambodia. Dan and Nuka sold everything they owned and moved there. Then they did something simple but crucially important. They asked local people what their needs are, and the responses were not what you might expect. They said a good quality English school. Why? Because English empowers people in all sorts of amazing ways. So Dan and Nuka started teaching English to 10 young adults. And they couldn't make classes cheap or free, or all the kids would leave other English schools to get taught by a native English speaker instead. So it's not a good start to harm other local schools. So they charged fees out of the reach of those students at other schools, and Milk and Honey was born. The students that came were middle to upper class students ranging from young kids to young adults. But just like you and me, rich people might have material possessions, but they're poor in other ways, and some things are broken. Like healthy relationships with God, ourselves, others, and all the natural resources around us. But here's what they do have: influence, power, a voice in society, incredible potential. You see, it's nearly impossible for poor people to change culture in a hierarchical society. But influential people have influence. And now Dan and Nuka had an hour a day to spend with these amazing students. And you know what can happen in a classroom. You learn more than the curriculum. You learn life lessons. Have you ever had a teacher like that? A teacher that unlocks your potential, taps into your gifts and talents, challenges your worldview and dares you to think differently. Now here's the first challenge. There's some strong barriers standing in the way of change for Cambodians. It's an authoritarian, hierarchical society. Everything in their lives is controlled by someone. Everything is arranged. It's really, really hard to change culture in a society like this. It means walking alongside Cambodians as they face those barriers, and that takes relationship and trust, and those things take a lot of time. So, how do you stay connected to a family for a long time? English classes are great, but students move on into bigger and better things when they graduate. So here's our not very secret plan. We want to start a maternity clinic for expectant mums. We've seen that there's a huge lack of education for new mums and some dangerous misconceptions and superstitions. We want to start an early learning facility and childcare for the baby to grow into, a safe, fun learning environment. And then provide a pathway for these kids into our English lessons. We also want to start a commercial cafe to connect with students after they graduate, as well as with their parents and the wider community. And finally, build a church where Cambodians are transformed by the love of Jesus. We're partially self-sustainable, but we can't do all this without a lot of help. We often run out of money, but we continue in faith that provision will come. Your financial support could be the miracle we need right now. Milk and Honey is named after the promised land in the Bible. God's plan for every person is to not stay in the wilderness of hopelessness, corruption, broken relationships and darkness. There's a promise and a purpose for every Cambodian. We exist to empower Cambodians to change everything. This is Rohit, one of Milk and Honey's first students. He's now our school principal. And those are his words. He wants to change everything, and he will, along with other Cambodians, in ways that we could never dream. But here's what we need: prayer, funding, teams, volunteer teachers, midwives and cafe staff. You and I, we empower Dan and Nuka and the Western team. They empower the Cambodian staff. The Cambodian staff empower the students, and the students are the ones that really change everything. Remember Peng? She presented the idea of running a free English class for underprivileged kids. But she didn't just present the idea. She rallied her whole class together to plan, fund and teach these classes themselves. That's what you call completing an assignment. She's becoming a world changer already, and that's what empowerment looks like. We'd like to invite you to come on the adventure with us. Help us complete this engine of multiplication where gospel seeds can take root and grow into a vibrant Cambodian church. Together, we can empower Cambodians to find their land of milk and honey.